The brain cannot relax until it completes unfinished tasks, and it cannot forget until it relaxes. This theory comes from a scientist. Why, for instance, can't you forget your first love? First, let's relax your brain by watching a very short video. Then, let's examine together what your brain does once it relaxes. See you in 20 seconds. Did you feel that? That little release right in your chest? That's your brain telling you something just finished. You can let it go now. You can move on. But what if it hadn't finished? What if I'd cut that video off 2 seconds before the ball got out? That exact feeling, the one you'd have felt right then, has a name. A man and a woman spent years running experiments on it and found real evidence for why it happens. It's called the Zeigarnik Effect. Now subscribe, and let's finish what's unfinished. This story actually starts with a woman in a café in Berlin in the 1920s. A psychologist named Lewin was sitting there with one of his students, a young woman named Bluma Zeigarnik. The café was warm, bustling, and full of quiet routine. A perfect place to sit and watch people, which is exactly what she loved doing. And Lewin noticed something strange about the waiter working the room. The place was packed, orders were complicated, and yet this waiter moved between a dozen tables without writing a single thing down. He remembered every dish, every substitution, every unpaid bill in perfect detail. He was holding a dozen separate orders in his head at once, effortlessly. Then the bill got paid at one table. And within minutes, he couldn't recall a thing about it. Not amnesia, something much stranger. Zeigarnik watched this happen, fascinated, turning it over in her mind. What made an unpaid order so unforgettable, and a paid one vanish so completely? She took that question straight into the lab. In 1927, she gave people a series of simple tasks, puzzles, arithmetic problems, building little models. She let them work through the tasks one at a time. She let them finish about half of the tasks normally. And on the other half, she interrupted them right in the middle before they could complete it. 2 piles of tasks, essentially. One finished, one left hanging. Later, she asked everyone to recall what tasks they'd worked on. People remembered the interrupted tasks, the unfinished ones, roughly 90% better than the ones they'd actually completed. Her supervisor, Lewin, had a theory for why. He called it psychic tension. The moment you start a task, your brain opens something like an active file for it. And that file stays open, costing you a little bit of mental energy the entire time. Finish the task, and the file closes. The tension releases. But leave it open, interrupt it, walk away, never resolve it, and that file just stays there, running quietly in the background. Which, once you know this, suddenly explains a huge number of things that happen to you constantly. It's why a TV show ending on a cliffhanger is so much harder to walk away from than one that wraps up cleanly. It's why seeing seen under a text with no reply feels almost physically uncomfortable. It's why an unfinished to-do list nags at you at 11 at night, even when you have no intention of doing any of it right now. Every one of those is a tiny open file, a little loop your brain refuses to close on its own. Some of those files are small and forgettable within a day, but some sit there for years. And this is where things get a lot less trivial than a to-do list. Because somewhere in the pile, there's usually one file that's heavier than all the others. Think about someone you couldn't stop thinking about after it ended. Not the relationship that ended cleanly, the one where you both said what needed saying and walked away, and it actually felt finished. That kind closes, quietly, on its own. I mean the other kind, the one that just stopped. No real conversation, no explanation that ever quite added up. That kind stays open, and it keeps pulling at you. Psychologists studying breakups have found something consistent. It's not the length of the relationship, or even how much you love the person, that predicts how hard it is to let go. It's whether it ended with closure. A small, quiet sailboat sitting at a dock, waiting for a trip that was talked about but never taken. You stand at the edge of that same dock sometimes, at least in your head, looking at a boat that never left. A campfire, a tent, 2 chairs, one of them always empty in the memory. You sit in the one chair that's yours, and the other one just stays empty. An outdoor movie night you kept promising each other, a candle, a blanket. Next month, we'll do it next month. You're still sitting on that blanket sometimes, watching a screen that never actually played anything. A long walk you always meant to take together and just never got around to. And in your head, you're still standing exactly where the plan stopped, looking down a trail neither of you ever finished walking. None of those are memories. They're open tasks, little unfinished files your brain started building the moment you imagined them. And they never got to close because the relationship ended before you did. Notice something about all 4 of those. Not one of them is really about the person's face or their voice. They're about the plans, the specific unfinished imagined future you built together and never got to live. That's why it isn't always the good memories that haunt you the most. Sometimes it's the ones that never actually happened. Now, a quick honest note, because this channel doesn't like giving you a tidier story than the evidence actually supports. Some modern attempts to replicate Zeigarnik's original findings have gotten mixed results. The core idea, that interruption affects memory, holds up well. The exact size of the effect, the 90%, is less consistently reproduced today than her original numbers suggested. But the underlying mechanism, that your brain treats unfinished business differently than finished business, remains one of the most widely supported ideas in memory psychology a century later. Somewhere in your life right now, there's probably an open file like this. Maybe more than one. Your brain isn't going to let it go on its own. It's not built to. The tension doesn't fade with time the way people promise you it will. It fades when the loop actually closes, one way or another. Sometimes that closing comes from outside. An answer, a conversation, a real ending. And sometimes it has to come from you deciding to close it yourself without ever getting the ending you originally wanted. So the real question isn't why you can't stop thinking about it. It's what it would actually take for you specifically to close the file. Maybe that's writing the conversation down that never happened just for yourself. Maybe it's actually taking the walk alone and letting that be the ending instead. Maybe it's just naming the 4 or 5 things that are still open and admitting they're open instead of pretending you're fine. Zeigarnik herself went on to spend decades more in psychology, long after that afternoon in the café. She studied memory, then later the effects of brain injury on the mind. A woman who once watched a waiter forget an order now spent her life studying how the mind holds on and how it lets go. One quiet observation in one Berlin cafe, still shaping how we understand the mind 100 years later. And maybe that's the part worth sitting with. The mind doesn't forget what mattered most. It forgets what got finished. Which means the sailboat, the campfire, the candlelit blanket, the unfinished trail. they're not still there because they were the best moments. They're still there because they're the only ones that never got to end. So look up at whatever your own open sky looks like tonight, and ask yourself honestly which files you're still carrying open. Not to torture yourself with them, just to finally quietly decide what closing them might actually look like. If this helped you understand a thought loop you've been stuck in, that's the whole point of this channel. Subscribe and let's finish what's unfinished. See you in the next one.